The great crystal halls of Zentari Prime had seen many historic moments, but nothing like this. Ambassador Kethvar stood at the center of the circular chamber, his scaled hands shaking as he held the data pad. Around him, representatives from 1,000 different worlds waited in silence. "The readings are impossible," Kethvar said, his voice echoing through the vast space. "Our deep space scanners detected massive energy signatures from the Sol system 3 days ago." A low murmur spread through the assembled aliens. The Sol system had been dead for 3,000 years. Everyone knew the story. The humans had destroyed themselves in some terrible war, burning their home planet to ash. The galaxy had mourned briefly, then moved on. "Perhaps it's a natural phenomenon," suggested Counselor Veltar from the Etherian Collective. Her gentle blue glow pulsed with concern. "Solar flares? Asteroid impacts?" "No." Kethvar's voice cut through the whispers. "The energy patterns match archived human technology signatures. But that's not the strangest part." He activated the holographic display in the center of the chamber. A 3-dimensional map of the Sol system appeared, showing 9 planets orbiting a yellow star. But something was wrong. Where Earth should have been a dead, burning rock, the scanner showed massive structures, orbital platforms larger than moons, construction projects that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever built. "This is what our scouts found," Kethvar continued. "Industrial activity on a scale we've never seen. And it's all around Earth." The chamber erupted in noise. Delegates shouted questions in dozens of languages. Some stood and pointed at the display. Others huddled with their advisors, whispering urgently. Admiral Kate Morrison watched the chaos from the bridge of her flagship, hidden in the dark space beyond Zentari Prime's sensor range. She was a tall woman with gray streaks in her brown hair and scars across her weathered face. Those scars told the story of humanity's long journey through the void. "They're scared," said Dr. Alan Brooks, standing beside her. He was younger than Kate, but his eyes held the weight of someone who had studied too much history. "They should be." Kate nodded. 3,000 years, Alan. 3,000 years we've been planning for this moment." Behind them, Captain Lisa Stone worked at her console. She was small and quick, with sharp green eyes that missed nothing. "The Galactic Council is calling for emergency sessions. They're trying to figure out what to do." "Let them panic," Kate said. "They had 3,000 years to feel guilty about what they did. Now they get to feel afraid." The truth was simple, though the galaxy had forgotten it. Humans hadn't destroyed Earth themselves. The Galactic Council had done it for them. A coalition of 12 species had decided that humanity was too dangerous, too aggressive, too unpredictable for galactic peace. So they had bombed Earth from orbit, turning the blue-green world into a burning wasteland. But they hadn't killed all the humans. Some had escaped in crude generation ships, fleeing into the dark spaces between galaxies. The aliens had assumed those few survivors would die in the void. They were wrong. "Captain Stone," Kate said, "take us to the edge of their sensor range. It's time to introduce ourselves." Lisa's fingers danced across her controls. The massive human ship moved forward, its advanced engines making no sound in the vacuum of space. Around them, hundreds of other human vessels followed. This was just the advance fleet. Behind them, hidden in the darkness, waited millions more. On Zentari Prime, the emergency session was getting nowhere. The delegates argued about what the readings meant, whether humans could really have survived, and what they should do about it. Some wanted to send scientific expeditions. Others demanded military reconnaissance. Then every screen in the chamber went black. A woman's face appeared on the displays. She was human, obviously, with the distinctive features that had once been common throughout the Sol system. But there was something different about her. Her eyes held a cold intelligence that made even the bravest delegate step back. "Greetings, Galactic Council," the woman said. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. "My name is Admiral Kate Morrison. I represent the human diaspora fleet." The chamber fell silent. Even the air recycling system seemed to quiet down. "I'm sure you're confused," Kate continued. "You thought we were all dead. You made sure Earth burned bright enough to be seen from neighboring systems. You wanted to send a message to any other species that might be too aggressive for your taste. Counselor. Veltar stood up. Admiral Morrison, if humans survived the destruction of Earth, we welcome you back to the galactic community. Whatever happened in the past? The past? Kate's smile was sharp as a blade. Let me tell you about the past, Counselor. 3,000 years ago, your people voted to exterminate mine. 12 species decided humanity was too dangerous to live. You used orbital bombardment platforms to turn our world into glass and ash. She paused, letting her words sink in. But here's what you didn't know. Some of us escaped. Not many, but enough. We've spent 3,000 years in the dark between galaxies building and planning and remembering, and now we're home. On her ship, Kate gestured to Lisa. Show them. The holographic display in the council chamber changed. Now it showed the space around Centauri Prime. Dots of light appeared throughout the system. Hundreds of them. Thousands. These are just our scout ships, Kate explained. Our main fleet is still arriving. We have factory ships the size of moons, city ships carrying billions of humans, warships that make your most advanced battlecruisers look like toys. Ambassador Kethvar found his voice. What do you want from us? Kate's expression didn't change. Justice. Reparations. The surrender of anyone still alive who participated in Earth's burning. You have 30 days to decide how you want to handle this, because we're not the primitive species you once knew. We've had 3,000 years to evolve, to advance, to prepare. The transmission ended. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Again, but this time it was different. This wasn't confusion or curiosity. This was fear. Kate turned away from the display. Alan, begin Phase 2. I want detailed intelligence on every species that voted for Earth's destruction. Lisa, maintain our position but start jamming their communications. Let them panic for a while. What about the species that opposed the bombing? Dr. Brooks asked. Kate's expression softened slightly. They'll have a chance to prove they're different. But the others? She looked out at the stars where the lights of human ships glittered like vengeful angels. The others are going to learn what it means to burn. The galaxy had enjoyed 3,000 years of peace. That peace was about to end. The archives on the human ship Memorial held 3,000 years of carefully preserved records. Dr. Amy Carter walked through the vast digital library, her fingers trailing across holographic displays that showed the truth the galaxy had tried to forget. Amy was old even by human standards. Advanced medical technology had kept her alive for over 4 centuries, but her purpose was simple. She remembered everything. Every detail about Earth's last days, every face of the aliens who had voted for genocide, every lie they had told afterward. Show me the Zolonian records, she said to the AI system. The display changed, showing the tall reptilian aliens who had led the coalition against Earth. Ambassador Vex Khan appeared on screen, speaking to the Galactic Council 3,000 years ago. The humans are too aggressive, his recorded voice said. They expand too quickly, fight too much, adapt too fast. If we allow them to spread throughout the galaxy, they will eventually dominate us all. Amy watched the recording she had seen thousands of times before. In the background, she could see other council members nodding in agreement. The Vortok Empire's representative, the crystalline beings from Nexus 7. Even some of the supposedly peaceful species had supported the decision. On the bridge of her scout ship, Commander Jake Peters reviewed the same files. Jake was younger than most of humanity's leaders, born during the long journey between galaxies. He had never seen Earth, but he had grown up hearing stories about the blue-green world that should have been his home. How many of them are still alive, Gayer? He asked his tactical officer. Lieutenant Paul Gray checked his datapad. 17 of the original council members who voted for the bombing. Most species don't live as long as we do now, but some have life. Extension technology. Jake nodded grimly. Mark them as priority targets. When the time comes, they answer for what they did. Back on Centauri Prime, the Galactic Council was in chaos. Emergency sessions had been running for days, with no one able to agree on what to do about the human fleet. Some delegates wanted to negotiate, others called for military action. Most just wanted the problem to go away. Councillor Veltar stood before the assembly, her blue glow dimmed with exhaustion. We need to understand what really happened to Earth. Our official records say the planet was destroyed in a solar flare event. That's what we told everyone, growled General Zextar of the Vortok Empire. He was one of the few beings old enough to remember the real decision. But it was necessary. Humans were spreading through 3 star systems. They would have taken over everything given time. So you murdered an entire species, said a new voice. Every head in the chamber turned. A human woman stood at the main entrance, flanked by 2 guards who clearly weren't bothering to hide their weapons. She was tall and confident, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to see everything. I am Ambassador Helen Ward, she said, walking down the central aisle. I'm here to present humanity's formal demands. Security forces started to move, but their weapons wouldn't activate. Jake Peters stepped out from behind a pillar, his device in hand, jamming all electronics in the chamber. How did you get past our defenses? Councillor Veltar asked. Helen smiled. We've had 3,000 years to study your technology. Your security systems are based on designs we gave you before the bombing. Did you really think we wouldn't know how to beat them? She reached the center of the chamber and activated her own holographic display. The air filled with images and documents that made several delegates gasp in recognition. This is what really happened to Earth, Helen said. Not a solar flare, not human self-destruction. Orbital bombardment by a coalition of 12 species who decided we were inconvenient. The display showed the attack itself. Massive alien ships surrounding Earth, their weapons charging. Then came the bombardment. Beam after beam of energy striking, the planet's surface turning continents into molten glass. 2 billion humans died in the first hour, Helen continued. Another billion died in the fires that followed. The rest suffocated when the atmosphere burned away. Some of the younger delegates were backing away from the display, clearly horrified by what they were seeing. But the older ones, the ones who remembered, sat in stone silence. We have records of every ship that participated, Helen said. Every captain who fired their weapons. Every council member who voted for extermination. Every species that provided support. The display changed again, showing detailed files on hundreds of individuals. Photos, service records, voting histories. 3,000 years of careful intelligence gathering. General Zextar stood up, his massive frame towering over the other delegates. Humans were a threat to galactic peace. The decision was necessary for the greater good. Greater good? Helen's voice was dangerously quiet. Tell me, General, how many wars has the galaxy fought since Earth burned? Zextar's expression faltered. The truth was uncomfortable. Since humanity's extinction, the galaxy had seen dozens of conflicts. Border wars, trade disputes, territorial expansion. The peace they had hoped to preserve by destroying Earth had never really existed. The Drakmari Civil War, Helen continued, reading from her files. 60 million dead, the Nexus Crystal Crisis, 12 worlds sterilized, the Vortak expansion, wars, 300 million casualties. Should I go on? She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from every species. You destroyed us because you were afraid we would cause wars. But we never started any conflicts that came close to what you've done to each other since. Back on the memorial, Dr. Amy Carter was preparing humanity's ultimatum. The document was thousands of pages long, detailing every crime committed against Earth and its people. But the demands were simple. Complete territorial concessions from the 12 species involved in the bombing, reparations equal to the economic value of everything humanity had lost, and the surrender of every individual still alive who had participated in the decision. They'll never agree to all of this, said Captain Danny Ross, reading over her shoulder. Danny led humanity's Special Operations Forces, the soldiers who would enforce any agreement. No, Amy agreed. They won't. But we had to make the offer. When they refuse, everyone will know we tried diplomacy first. On his scout ship, Commander Jake Peters received new orders. Phase 3 was beginning. Demonstration time. Set course. For the Vortok border, he told his pilot. And send word to the Retribution. They're going to want to see this. The human fleet began to move. Not all of it. That would have been impossible for any sensor system to track. But enough ships to make a point. They swept through the outer systems of Vortok space, their advanced scanners mapping every defense, every weapon, every weakness. The Vortok military responded exactly as expected. 3 battle fleets moved to intercept the human ships, confident in their superior numbers and proven technology. They learned their mistake in the first 30 seconds of combat. Human weapons were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. Energy beams that adapted to enemy shields, making them stronger with each hit they absorbed. Missiles that could phase in and out of normal space, making them impossible to intercept. And defensive systems that turned attacks back on their attackers. The first Vortok fleet was destroyed without a single human ship taking damage. The second fleet retreated after losing half their vessels. The third never engaged at all. News of the battle spread through the galaxy faster than light-speed communications. Humanity wasn't just back. They were the dominant military force in known space. On Centauri Prime, Ambassador Helen Ward received reports of the engagement while still addressing the Galactic Council. That was a demonstration, she said calmly. We could have destroyed their entire space navy if we'd wanted to. Instead, we showed restraint. But our patience has limits. She looked directly at General Zextar. You have 25 days left to consider our demands. I suggest you use them wisely. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Counselor Veltar approached Helen privately. Our species opposed the bombing, she said quietly. We tried to stop it. Helen nodded. We know. Your people will be treated fairly when this is over. But first, the guilty must pay for what they did. The Etherian delegate watched the humans leave, their confident steps echoing through the crystal halls. For 3,000 years, the galaxy had convinced itself that the destruction of Earth was a necessary evil, a difficult decision made for the greater good. Now the children of that burned world had returned, and they remembered everything. The news spread through the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, beings gathered around communication screens to hear the impossible truth. Humanity wasn't extinct. Earth hadn't been destroyed by accident. And now the survivors were back, demanding justice for genocide. On the Etherian homeworld, young Velmira confronted her grandmother in the crystal gardens where their family had meditated for generations. You knew, Velmira said, her blue glow flickering with anger. All these years you knew what really happened to the humans. Elder Veltar nodded sadly. The council voted. We opposed it, but we were outnumbered. The other species were afraid. Afraid of what? Humans were barely spacefaring. They had no weapons that could threaten anyone. They adapted too quickly, Veltar explained. In 50 years they went from first contact to establishing colonies on 12 worlds. The Zilonians calculated that within 2 centuries, humans would outnumber every other species combined. Velmira turned away, staring at the distant stars. Somewhere out there, human ships waited for the galaxy's answer. So you killed them all. Children, families, everyone. Similar conversations were happening on hundreds of worlds. The younger generations, who had grown up believing humans were extinct, were horrified to learn their governments had committed genocide. Protests began on dozens of planets. Some turned violent. General Ryan Clark watched the chaos from his command ship, a massive vessel that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever built. Ryan was humanity's military commander, a man who had spent centuries planning for this moment. Unlike some human leaders, he felt no sympathy for the aliens' political troubles. Let them fight among themselves, he told his staff. It makes our job easier. Captain Danny Ross disagreed. Sir, some of these species genuinely opposed Earth's destruction. The Etherians, the Cosmic Wanderers, several others. Maybe we should distinguish between our enemies and potential allies. Ryan's expression hardened. They stood by and watched. It happened, Ross. That makes them guilty too. The debate between human leaders was growing more intense each day. Some, like Ambassador Helen Ward, believed in measured justice. Others, like General Clark, wanted complete galactic conquest. The decision would ultimately rest with Admiral Kate Morrison, but even she was torn. On the Zilonian homeworld, emergency meetings ran day and night. Supreme Commander Vectar paced the war room, his scales clicking against the metal floor. "How do we fight an enemy with superior technology?" he asked his advisors. General Hexvan studied the tactical reports. "Their shields adapt to our weapons. Their ships are faster and more maneuverable. And they seem to know the location of every military installation we have. Because they've been watching us for 3,000 years, Vectar growled. Planning, learning, preparing, while we thought they were dead. The Zilonian military was the most powerful force in the galaxy, with battle fleets that had conquered dozens of systems. But the brief engagement with human ships had shown how meaningless their advantage was. They needed a new strategy. "What, about biological weapons?" suggested Science Director Lektar. "Humans are still organic beings. They must have vulnerabilities we can exploit." Vectar considered this. It was a violation of galactic law, but then again, so was genocide. Begin research immediately, and contact our allies. If we're going to survive this, we need to work together. Meanwhile, Dr. Ben Taylor led a very different kind of meeting on the human medical ship, Mercy. Ben was one of the few human leaders who opposed the aggressive approach to galactic justice. "We're becoming the very thing we once fought against," he told his supporters. "Conquerors who use superior technology to dominate weaker species." Dr. Lisa Green nodded in agreement. "I've seen the military's plans. They want to occupy every major world, disarm every species, remake the galaxy in our image. How is that different from what the aliens tried to do to us?" "The difference," said a new voice, "is that we're the victims here." Captain Sam Miller stood in the doorway, his uniform bearing the insignia of human ground forces. "They murdered our world, Ben. Billions of our people died because these aliens decided we were inconvenient. Now you want to forgive them?" "I want justice," Ben replied. "Not revenge. There's a difference." The philosophical divide was tearing humanity apart. They had spent 3,000 years united in their goal of returning home. Now that they were here, they couldn't agree on what justice should look like. Admiral Kate Morrison faced the hardest decision of her life. She stood alone on her observation deck, looking out at the galaxy that had once tried to destroy her species. Below, staff officers waited for orders that would affect billions of lives. Her communications officer approached cautiously. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender offers from 17 species. They're willing to meet our demands in exchange for protection from the others." Kate wasn't surprised. The galaxy was fracturing exactly as human strategists had predicted. Fear was making allies turn against each other. "What about the main targets?" she asked. "The Zilonians are mobilizing their full military. The Vortok Empire is calling for a grand alliance against us, and the Nexus Collective has gone silent. We think they're preparing some kind of superweapon." Kate nodded. The easy part was over. Now came the war. Her decision was interrupted by proximity alarms. Something was approaching the human fleet at impossible speed. The main display activated, showing a Zilonian diplomatic vessel. "They want to talk," the communications officer reported. "Let them come," Kate said. "But scan them for weapons. I don't trust desperate enemies." An hour later, Supreme Commander Vectar stood in Kate's conference room. He was larger than most humans, his reptilian features showing the stress of recent days. "Admiral Morrison," he began formally, "I come to discuss terms." "The terms are simple," Kate replied. "Complete surrender, reparations, and the prosecution of war criminals. Nothing has changed." Vectar's eyes narrowed. "Your demands would mean the end of Zilonian civilization. We cannot accept them. You should have thought of that before you burned our world. That decision was made 3,000 years ago by leaders who are long dead. Why should current generations pay for ancient crimes?" Kate's expression didn't change. because current generations benefited from those crimes. The galaxy's resources were divided among fewer species after humanity was eliminated. Everyone got a larger share. She gestured to the window, where Zilonian colonies were visible on distant planets. How many of those worlds would have been human colonies if Earth had survived? How many Zilonian children are alive today because human children never got the chance to be born? Vector had no answer for that. The mathematics of genocide were simple and brutal. You have one chance, Kate continued. Surrender now, accept our terms, and your species survives as a minor power under human oversight. Refuse, and we'll do to your homeworld what you did to ours. The Zilonian commander straightened to his full height. Then you'll have to fight for it. After he left, Kate called her senior staff together. The time for diplomacy was over. Begin Phase 4, she ordered. Signal all fleet commanders. The Zilonians have chosen war. General Clark smiled grimly. Finally. What are our rules of engagement? Kate looked out at the stars, thinking of Earth as it had been 3,000 years ago. Blue oceans, green continents, billions of human lives snuffed out in a single day. No restrictions, she said quietly. They wanted to see what happens when humans go to war. Let's show them. Across the galaxy, human ships began to move. The demonstrations were over. The real fighting was about to begin. On planets throughout known space, beings looked up at the night sky and wondered if they would live to see another dawn. The children of Earth had returned home and they were angry. The galaxy was about to learn why their ancestors had been so afraid of humanity in the first place. The war began at exactly 0800 Galactic Standard Time. Across 17 star systems, human ships emerged from stealth mode and began their assault on military targets. The galaxy's greatest powers discovered that 3,000 years of technological advancement made their defenses useless. Captain Sam Miller led the ground assault on the Zilonian Military Academy on Kextar Prime. His soldiers moved through the complex like ghosts, their advanced armor making them nearly invisible to enemy sensors. The Zilonian cadets never knew what hit them. Academy secured, Sam reported to Admiral Morrison. Enemy casualties minimal, prisoners secured. Their training facilities are ours. It was the same story across the galaxy. Human forces struck with surgical precision, crippling military infrastructure while avoiding civilian targets. The message was clear: surrender now, or face total destruction. On the Vortok capital world, General Zextar watched his space navy disappear from tactical displays. 300 ships, the pride of his empire, reduced to debris in less than an hour. How is this possible? He roared at his officers. They have fewer ships than we do. His tactical advisor's voice shook as he answered. Sir, each human vessel appears to be equivalent to an entire battle group. Their weapons adapt to our defenses and our weapons can't penetrate their shields. Zextar slammed his fist on the command table. Then we use other methods. Contact the Biological Warfare Division. Tell them to prepare the plague virus. It was a desperate decision and everyone in the room knew it. Biological weapons were banned by galactic law, considered too horrible even for warfare. But the Vortok Empire was facing extinction, and desperate enemies do desperate things. Dr. Lucy Green was treating wounded civilians on the border world of Nexus 7 when the plague hit. At first it seemed like a normal outbreak, some kind of respiratory illness affecting the human relief workers. Then people started dying. It's specifically engineered to target human genetics, she told Admiral Morrison via emergency transmission. Someone created this virus to kill only us. The attack changed everything. Up until that moment, human forces had shown restraint, avoiding civilian casualties and focusing on military targets. The biological attack shattered that restraint like glass. Admiral Kate Morrison stood in her command center, watching reports flow in from the plague zones. Thousands of humans were dead, including many civilians who had been providing humanitarian aid to alien populations. They escalated, she said quietly. They chose to target civilians. General Ryan Clark stepped forward. This gives us justification for total war, Admiral. No more limited engagements, no more avoiding population centers. Kate nodded slowly. Signal all fleet commanders. Operation Earthfall is now active. Operation Earthfall was humanity's contingency plan for total galactic conquest. Instead of surgical strikes against military targets, human forces would begin systematic destruction of enemy civilization itself. The first target was the Vortak homeworld. Commander Jake Peters watched from his scout ship as the human fleet surrounded the planet. There were no demands for surrender, no warnings to evacuate. The Vortak had used biological weapons against human civilians. Now they would face the consequences. Begin orbital bombardment, Admiral Morrison ordered. The attack lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Vortak homeworld was a burning wasteland, its atmosphere poisoned and its continents turned to glass. It was exactly what the aliens had done to Earth 3,000 years earlier. The psychological impact on the galaxy was immediate and devastating. For millennia, the great powers had considered themselves untouchable. Now one of them had been completely destroyed in a single day. On Centauri Prime, the Galactic Council held an emergency session, but this time, half the delegate seats were empty. Many species had already surrendered to humanity rather than face the fate of the Vortak. Counselor Veltar stood before the remaining representatives, her blue glow dim with exhaustion and grief. "We must surrender," she said simply. "Continuing this war will only lead to more destruction. Surrender means the end of galactic civilization as we know it," protested Ambassador Kethvar. "Humans will remake the galaxy in their image." "And what's wrong with that?" asked a new voice. Every head turned to see a young Zolonian female standing at the chamber entrance. She wore the simple clothes of a civilian, not the military uniform of her species delegation. "Who are you?" Veltar asked. "My name is Zaraket. I represent the Zolonian Liberation Front. We've been fighting our own government since the truth about Earth came out." She walked to the center of the chamber, her movements confident despite the hostile stares from her own species delegation. "Half my people support the humans now," she continued. "We're tired of being ruled by war criminals. We want justice for what our ancestors did." It was happening all over the galaxy. The younger generations, horrified by their government's role in genocide, were rebelling against their own leaders. Civil wars raged on dozens of worlds as species turned against themselves. Dr. Amy Carter watched the chaos from her archive ship with mixed emotions. This was what she had planned for centuries. The complete collapse of the old galactic order, but seeing it happen was more brutal than she had imagined. "Are we doing the right thing?" she asked Captain Danny Ross. Danny considered the question carefully. "They murdered our entire species, Amy. Billions of innocent people died because aliens decided we were inconvenient. What we're doing now isn't revenge, it's justice. Justice that's killing millions more innocents. The innocent ones are surrendering," Danny pointed out. "The ones still fighting are the ones who refuse to accept responsibility for what they did." On his flagship, Admiral Morrison received a priority transmission from an unexpected source. The Crystalline Minds, an ancient AI collective that had remained neutral in galactic politics for millions of years, wanted to negotiate. The crystalline being that appeared on her screen was beautiful and terrifying, a living construct of pure energy and mathematical perfection. "Admiral Morrison," it said in a voice like singing crystal, "we offer information in exchange for mercy." "What kind of information?" "The location of the original architects of Earth's destruction, the beings who conceived the plan and convinced others to support it. They still live, hidden in stasis chambers on a secret world." Kate's blood turned cold. "How many?" 17. Individuals from 12 species. They went into suspended animation shortly after the bombing, planning to sleep until the guilt faded from galactic memory. They wake periodically to check on their civilization's progress. The revelation changed everything. For 3,000 years, humanity had been targeting species and governments, holding entire civilizations responsible for ancient crimes. But now they had a chance to capture the actual individuals who had planned genocide. "Where are they?" Kate demanded. The crystalline mind provided coordinates to a hidden facility in the Void Nebula, a region of space so isolated that most species avoided it entirely. "Why are you telling us this?" Kate asked. "Because genocide is a mathematical impossibility that we cannot accept. The universe tends toward diversity and complexity. Actions that reduce diversity must be corrected." Kate immediately dispatched her best ships to the coordinates. If the original architects of Earth's destruction were still alive, humanity would finally have justice for their world's burning. Captain Lisa Stone led the mission into the Void Nebula. Her small fleet moved carefully through the region's dangerous energy storms, following the crystalline mind's directions to a hidden space station. "It's massive," her tactical officer reported, "and heavily shielded. Looks like it's been here for thousands of years." The station was a monument to paranoia and guilt. Its creators had built it to be invisible and impregnable, a place where they could sleep away the centuries until their crimes were forgotten. They had never imagined that their victims would return from the dead to hunt them down. The assault on the hidden station was swift and brutal. Human soldiers cut through defenses that hadn't been updated in millennia, following the scent of justice through corridors filled with the sleeping architects of genocide. One by one, they found them. 17 beings from 12 species, preserved in stasis for 3,000 years. The masterminds who had convinced the galaxy that humanity needed to die. When they were awakened, their first sight was human soldiers standing over their chambers. Their second sight was Admiral Kate Morrison's face on a communication screen. "Hello," she said with a cold smile. "We've been looking for you for a very long time." The capture of the genocide architects broke the back of galactic resistance. Faced with the prospect of their leaders being put on trial for crimes against humanity, the remaining allied species began surrendering in massive numbers. The war was nearly over. But for humanity, the real work was just beginning. Now they had to decide what kind of galaxy they wanted to build from the ashes of the old one. The trial of the genocide architects took place on New Geneva Station, a massive human construct built specifically for this moment. For 6 months, beings from across the galaxy watched as 17 ancient criminals faced justice for the destruction of Earth. Admiral Kate Morrison served as the chief prosecutor, presenting 3,000 years of evidence before a jury of both humans and aliens. The defendants sat in their energy cages, some defiant, others broken by the weight of their crimes. "You planned the systematic extermination of an entire species," Kate said during her closing statement. 2 billion innocent beings died because you decided they were inconvenient. Today, justice finally comes home. The verdicts were unanimous. Guilty on all counts. The sentences varied. Some received life imprisonment, others were executed, and a few were handed over to their own species for punishment. But the message was clear. Genocide would never be tolerated again. Dr. Amy Carter watched the final executions from her archive ship, feeling a strange mixture of satisfaction and emptiness. For 4 centuries, her life had been dedicated to this moment. Now it was over, and she wasn't sure what came next. "It's finished," she said to Captain Danny Ross. "They're all dead or imprisoned. Earth is avenged." Danny nodded, but his expression was troubled. "So what do we do now? We've torn down the old galactic order. How do we build something better?" It was the question that haunted every human leader. Victory had been easier than peace. On the rebuilt world of New Earth, construction crews worked around the clock to restore humanity's lost homeworld. Advanced terraforming technology had repaired the damage from the ancient bombardment, creating continents and oceans exactly as they had been 3,000 years ago. But New Earth was different from the original. Massive orbital defense platforms surrounded the planet, bristling with weapons that could destroy entire fleets. Underground, bunkers held enough supplies to survive a century-long siege. Humanity would never again be vulnerable to genocide. Captain Sam Miller walked through the rebuilt city of New London, watching human children play in parks that looked exactly like the ones their ancestors had known. But these children were different too. They had been born during the long journey between galaxies, raised on stories of their lost homeworld and the aliens who had burned it. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" asked Dr. Lisa Green, joining him on a bench overlooking the harbor. Sam considered the question. Around them, alien workers helped with construction projects, their species having surrendered to human authority. They were treated fairly but remained under strict supervision. Some of them will, he said finally, the ones who genuinely opposed what happened to Earth. The others, he shrugged. Maybe their children will in a few generations. The new galactic government was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Humanity held ultimate authority, but they shared power with species that had proven their commitment to peace and justice. The Etherian Collective received full membership, as did several other species that had opposed Earth's destruction. Former enemies faced different fates. The Zilonian Empire was broken up into smaller states, each governed by humans with local alien advisors. The surviving Vortak colonies were placed under direct human administration. Species that had been neutral during the genocide received limited autonomy, but remained under human oversight. Admiral Kate Morrison found herself facing the strangest challenge of her life, becoming the first human galactic chancellor. The woman, who had spent centuries planning for war, now had to learn how to build lasting peace. The hardest part isn't dealing with our former enemies, she told Dr. Ben Taylor during one of their frequent policy discussions. It's dealing with ourselves. Ben understood what she meant. Humanity had been united by their desire for justice, but now they were divided about what that justice should look like. Some humans wanted to rule the galaxy with an iron fist, ensuring that nothing like Earth's destruction could ever happen again. Others believed in rehabilitation and forgiveness, hoping to build a truly peaceful galactic community. We need to be better than they were, Ben argued. If we just become another conquering empire, then Earth's children really did die for nothing. Kate nodded, but she also understood the fears of humans like General Ryan Clark, who believed that only overwhelming strength could protect humanity from future genocide attempts. The compromise they reached was uniquely human, a system based on earned trust and proven behavior. Species that demonstrated their commitment to peace and justice could gradually regain autonomy. Those that showed signs of aggression or discrimination faced immediate intervention. Commander Jake Peters found himself in charge of the new Galactic Monitoring Service, a human-led organization that watched for signs of potential genocide or large-scale violence. His ships patrolled the galaxy, ensuring that no species could ever again plan the systematic destruction of another. We're not conquerors, he told his officers during a briefing. We're guardians. Our job is to make sure this never happens, again to anyone. It was a massive responsibility, one that would require generations to fulfill properly. But humanity had learned the value of long-term planning during their 3,000-year exile. On the former Zilonian homeworld, now called New Harmony, young Zaraket served as the first alien governor under human oversight. Her species had embraced the new order more enthusiastically than most, grateful to be free from their own militaristic government. My people are learning to live without the constant threat of war, she reported to Admiral Morrison during their monthly conference. The younger generation especially is adapting well to human values of cooperation and diversity, but not everyone was happy with the new order. Resistance movements operated on dozens of worlds, some violent, others simply refusing to cooperate with human authority. These groups were handled carefully. Humanity had learned the dangers of creating martyrs. Dr. Amy Carter spent her final years establishing the Memorial Archives, a vast library that preserved the complete history of Earth's destruction and humanity's return. Every detail was recorded, from the original genocide to the final victory, ensuring that future generations would never forget what had happened. History must remember, she said in her final recorded message. Not for revenge, but for prevention. The galaxy forgot what they did to us once. We cannot let them forget again. When Amy died peacefully at the age of 450, beings from 100 species attended her funeral. Even former enemies recognized her role in creating a more just galactic order. The true test of humanity's new system came 50 years after the war's end, when the Drakmari Collective attempted to enslave a newly spacefaring species called the Gentle Ones. The response was swift and decisive. Human fleets surrounded Drakmari space within hours. The Galactic Monitoring Service presented evidence of systematic oppression, and for the first time, the new galactic justice system was put to full use. "This is exactly what we swore to prevent," Admiral Morrison, now elderly but still sharp, told the Emergency Council session. "The strong cannot be allowed to prey on the weak." The Drakmari resistance lasted 3 days. Their leaders were arrested, tried, and sentenced according to the new galactic laws that humanity had written. The gentle ones were freed and given protection until they could defend themselves. It was a perfect example of how the new order was supposed to work, but it also raised questions about whether humanity was becoming too powerful, too controlling. Captain Lisa Stone, now in charge of humanitarian operations, faced this criticism directly during a public forum on New Earth. "You've created a galactic police state," accused a Nexus 7 representative. "Every species lives in fear of human judgment." Lisa's response was calm but firm. "Every species lives in safety from genocide. That's a trade most beings are willing to make." As the decades passed, a new generation grew up under the human-led galactic order. These young beings, both human and alien, knew only a galaxy where genocide was impossible and aggressive war was quickly punished. On the centennial anniversary of humanity's return, Admiral Morrison gave her final public address before retiring. She stood in the Great Assembly Hall of New Geneva Station, looking out at an audience that included representatives from over 1,000 species. 100 years ago, we came home seeking justice for a burned world," she said. "Today, we have built something our ancestors could only dream of. A galaxy where every species can live in peace, where the strong protect the weak, and where nothing like Earth's destruction can ever happen again." She paused, looking at the mix of human and alien faces in the audience. "We are not perfect rulers. We make mistakes. We sometimes abuse our power, and we struggle with the temptation to become the very thing we once fought against. But we remember Earth, and we remember why we fight. Not for conquest, but for justice. Not for revenge, but for peace." The applause that followed was genuine, coming from beings who had initially feared human rule but had learned to appreciate the security it provided. Dr. Ben Taylor, now the head of the Galactic Ethics Council, watched the ceremony with mixed emotions. Humanity had indeed created a better galaxy, but at the cost of becoming its permanent guardians. They could